Well, these were offered at an estate auction about 20 years ago in Fort Smith, Arkansas, from a family that was in the diplomatic corps and spent time in Russia. And supposedly they brought these items back, and I purchased these.
In terms of how they were portrayed or how they were advertised, can you tell me a little bit about that?
The items were described as items being brought back from Russia from the family. Other than that, I just don't recall.
In the world of Russian treasures, few names shine brighter than Fabergé, the legendary jeweler to the Tsars. So when a guest arrived on Antiques Roadshow with a gleaming jade drink set and an elegant wax seal case, both marked Fabergé, it seemed like a royal discovery. Each piece carried the aura of imperial Russia, golden mountings, the double-headed eagle, and even portraits of Nicholas and Alexandra. To any collector's eye, it screamed authenticity. The drink set cost $6,500, and the wax case around $1,000. Hefty sums for the time, but potentially small change if they were genuine.
Unfortunately, what I do have to tell you is that these are not Fabergé. Okay? These are copies, but these are extremely good copies. About 20 years ago, when I started in the auction business, a lot of this merchandise was just starting to come into the marketplace. And even experts in Fabergé were getting fooled by this because they were making really good replicas. I would say the drink set would bring a value at auction somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000. The wax holder, probably somewhere between $700 and $900. I would say for items like this, hold on to them, enjoy them. If these were real, at auction, a wax case in this quality would range anywhere between $20,000 and $30,000. And with the drink set, probably somewhere in the $40,000 to $60,000 range at auction, if these were original Fabergé.
Wow, that's interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming to the Roadshow.
This was picked up at an estate sale in Scottsdale about 15 years ago. I loved it, so I bought it.
Tell me how much you paid for the box.
I paid about $250 for it.
What do you know about it?
I've seen some Tiffany boxes, but I didn't know anything about Tiffany Studios of New York, which is stamped on the bottom.
Let's see if we can take a look at that. Tiffany, New York Studios, and then there's a number underneath that, yeah.
After all, the name Tiffany alone evokes visions of fine artistry, shimmering glass, and the unmatched craftsmanship of Louis Comfort Tiffany himself. But as the Antiques Roadshow appraiser examined it, the illusion began to crumble. The lettering wasn't the elegant, precision-stamped hallmark one would expect from Tiffany Studios. Instead, it appeared crudely scratched in, almost as if someone had tried too hard to imitate authenticity. The design lacked the refined balance and intricate detailing that defined genuine Tiffany bronze works, the kind of subtle mastery that can't be faked with weight alone. Though solid bronze, the box was a convincing but unmistakable imitation, likely produced in the 1980s when the market was flooded with replicas bearing famous names.
And the value, you paid $250. I think that would be an optimistic value now.
Okay.
I think you would probably be looking somewhere between $100 to $200.
Okay.
When it comes to American pottery, few names stir collectors' excitement like George Ohr, the self-proclaimed mad potter of Biloxi. His eccentric, twisted vessels, impossibly thin walls, and metallic glazes made his work a legend of the art world. So when a guest brought in a vase that seemed to carry all the hallmarks of Ohr's genius, the hope was electric. Could it be one of his rare, six-figure creations?
I've been doing some of my own research on it, by reading a lot of different books and everything else. I'm hopeful that is in a George Ohr authentic piece. I purchased it from an antique shop in northwestern New Jersey. I was told that they could not authenticate it. To me, it was an item of beauty. It looked like it had a possible potential of being an Ohr piece. I was looking at the walls, which I thought were thin. Not being an expert, I don't know if they're thin enough. And I was looking at the manipulation. When I turned it and looked upside down, the clay looked like it could have been real to me, but nobody could authenticate it. So more or less, I said, well, I like it. I think it's beautiful, but I can only pay what I think decorative value is for it. I offered him $250. He balked at me and everything else, and then eventually said, okay.
It had the folded form, the delicate walls, and the distinctive flair that felt unmistakably Ohr. But the appraiser saw something else, subtle inconsistencies invisible to most eyes. The glaze was too pale, the folds slightly off, the dimples just not quite right. The verdict, a fake. But not just any fake, a new generation of forgeries crafted entirely from scratch, rather than altered originals. The appraiser explained that early fakes had been genuine Ohr bisque pieces later reglazed to increase their value. But now, skilled forgers were recreating them completely, armed with years of study and access to countless reference materials.
It is not perfect, it's not good enough, it is very close. What is a concern to me is that this person who is in the Northeast keeps producing them, selling them on the internet. They appear and they are seen and they are purchased by people who just don't know.
Wow. Okay.
Its decorative value, just as it is, may very well be in the $250 range retail.
Right. To me, it's still attractive.
Well, it's a Tiffany lamp. I inherited it back in 1972, and it's been in a box ever since until this last couple days.
And why do you think it's Tiffany?
It has its name on the shade and on the base.
Both the base and the shade carried the name Tiffany Studios, New York, and that was enough to ignite anyone's hope of striking gold. But as the Antiques Roadshow appraiser carefully examined the piece, cracks in the story began to appear. The shade and base didn't quite fit together. Their styles didn't match. And the Tiffany marks? One was clumsily embedded in the leading, while the other looked awkwardly stamped, inconsistent with any authentic Tiffany signature. The truth was fascinating. The lamp wasn't Tiffany at all. The shade was made by the Unique Art Glass and Metal Company around 1910, one of the earliest competitors to replicate Tiffany's copper foil stained glass technique. The base, meanwhile, came from Mo Bridges Company of Milwaukee, crafted about a decade later and meant for a completely different kind of shade.
This is what I always say to people. You look at the object first, you don't look at the signature. Signature is always the last thing I look at. Yeah. In a retail store, this would probably sell for $1,000 to $1,500.
I was hoping it was worth a little more than that.
I bought it at an estate tag sale.
Okay.
And I ended up paying full price for it, but I don't remember how much it was.
Oh, darn it. I always like to know what you paid for something.
A tiny, mysterious eye painted beneath glass, framed in gold, known as a lover's eye. Lover's eye jewelry first appeared in the late 18th century, inspired by Prince George of Wales, who sent a miniature painting of his eye to his forbidden lover. Soon, aristocrats across Europe were commissioning these intimate keepsakes, little portraits on ivory, set in pearls or diamonds, whispered symbols of devotion. But while this ring looked the part, something was off. The materials, the brushwork, even the frame lacked the refinement of Georgian craftsmanship.
They're having sort of a renaissance in popularity today with shows like Bridgerton, where they've incorporated lover's eye pins in the show. Even my husband has a lover's eye pin tattoo of my eye.
Oh my goodness.
But
that's amazing.
I know. So I love them. What is problematic about collecting them is that they're very easily faked. I think that's the case of what you have here.
Really?
So I would say, considering that I feel that it's in the style of a lover's eye pin, it's worth about $200 to $300.
Okay, thank you.
I bought this piece in 2002 in a gallery in Seattle. I've spent the last 30 years or so going to South America, particularly the Andean countries. And so I recognized it, sort of the design anyway, from museums that I had been to. And so I decided just to go ahead and buy it.
Did you indicate what you paid for it?
I paid $1,800 for it.
$1,800. Okay.
The guest believed he might be holding a true relic of the ancient Tirona civilization. The piece seemed to carry every hallmark of authenticity: intricate modeling, animal figures perched on the rim, and a human form sculpted within. It even came with a certificate of authenticity that claimed an extraordinary timeline, anywhere from 400 BC to 1500 AD. But as the Antiques Roadshow appraiser examined it, the illusion began to fade. Genuine Pre-Columbian pottery was fired in pit kilns, resulting in a dull, low resonance when tapped. This one, however, rang sharply.
Yeah.
You hear I tap that?
Right.
When you hear that, it's a very high ring.
The telltale sound of a modern, electrically fired piece. Its perfect symmetry and unusually elaborate design also strayed far from the forms known to come from Tirona artisans. Despite the official-looking paperwork, the verdict was clear. The bowl was not an ancient treasure, but a modern imitation.
Examining all the documentation in this, we have to conclude that this piece is not authentic.
I wondered. Right.
So I know you're out $1,800, and that's not a pleasant thing for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sorry about that. I can tell you that the value of this now, and this would be on a retail basis, would be more in the $200 to $300 range on the decorative market.
Mm-hmm.
If this thing were real, I mean, this would be so rare and so unusual. I would appraise this between $6,000 and $8,000.
Mm-hmm.
Still, there was a silver lining. After the show, the guest returned to the gallery, which honorably stood by its reputation. Though more than a decade had passed, they re-evaluated the piece and refunded his full purchase price in store credit. The incident became a reminder that in the world of antiquities, authenticity is fragile, but integrity is priceless.
I hope that this is a real Cartier Snow White bracelet that was made for Disney when the movie was produced. We saw this in an estate jewelry shop window, and we came home, and within 24 hours he had called the store and said, "We want it, I want it for her, I want it." We bought it in 2012, and we paid a little bit more than $3,200.
Cartier's Snow White pieces were said to be part of an exclusive promotional line made when the animated classic was released, with only a handful ever produced. The originals bore distinct inscriptions, Cartier alongside WDENT, marking their official link to Walt Disney Enterprises. But when the Antiques Roadshow appraiser examined the bracelet, the magic quickly faded. The craftsmanship was indeed lovely, refined and elegant, but it lacked the all-important hallmark. Without the signature Cartier Disney inscription, it couldn't be tied to that legendary collaboration. The truth, it wasn't an authentic Cartier promotional piece at all. Still, the appraiser acknowledged its quality, calling it an excellent little piece of jewelry that could hold its own in any collection.
I would give it a retail valuation on its own merits of approximately $2,000.
Okay.
Back in 1971 through about 73, there was a little antique shop just outside of Philadelphia I used to frequent. The elderly woman who ran the shop, one day when I came in, said, "You know, I just got a piece from an odd lot from an estate sale, and I know you'd appreciate it. I'd like you to see it." And she showed me this set. I was completely blown away by it, taken in by it. And she said, "I know this is beyond whatever you spend." And I said, "I have to have it." And she cited the amazing sum of $200. I said, "What is it?" And the only thing she could tell me was she believed it was from Dresden, Germany. And she thought it was early 18th century, but had no idea.
At first glance, the clues seemed promising. The pieces were small, consistent with 18th century tea service sizes when tea was precious and costly. The floral decoration mirrored the elegance of early Dresden craftsmanship. But when the appraiser turned the pieces over, the truth lay hidden beneath the glaze. The underglaze A mark wasn't the royal insignia of Augustus Rex. It was the mark of Helena Wolfson, a Dresden decorating firm known for imitating early Meissen porcelain. Wolfson's workshop, active in the late 19th century, produced fine hand-painted pieces in the Dresden style, often adorning them with false marks to suggest earlier origins. Though not Meissen, and not from the 1700s, these works are still admired for their artistry and age, now antiques in their own right.
So in today's market, my guess is that a retail price for this set would be somewhere between $400 and $600.
Oh, wow.
Which sounds is a decent amount of money. It still is a nice piece of hand-painted Dresden porcelain.
Interesting. I'm just surprised. I had really thought that I had a 300-year-old piece.
I was actually on vacation in the Philippines, and I got it in an antique store in Manila.
And this is a receipt from this Manila Antiques in Manila. And they say one-piece bronze water vessel with patina, Ming Dynasty, 1368 to 1644, 19,000 Pesos.
Right.
Philippine pesos.
Right. Which is, that's about $400.
400 US dollars.
Yeah.
Okay.
The elegant form and intricate mask motifs pointed not to the Ming era, but to something far more ancient, the Shang dynasty, nearly 3,500 years ago. Known as a yu, this type of vessel was once used in ritual ceremonies for wine offerings to ancestors. The patterns of Taotie masks and mythical birds were classic Shang designs. For a moment, it seemed the guest might have unearthed a piece of China's earliest civilization. But beauty can deceive. The appraiser soon revealed that while the design was faithful, the execution was wrong. The handles were too thick, the flanges too clumsy, the surface too heavy. And the mark on the bottom? A modern forgery. The vessel wasn't cast in an ancient imperial foundry. It was made around 1900 when workshops began producing convincing fakes to satisfy the growing appetite for Chinese antiquities in the West.
At auction today, this is worth about $200 to $250.
Is it? Okay.
A real Shang bronze,
it'd be a lot
$40,000
more.
to $60,000.
Wow. Wow.
I live in a 300-year-old whaler's cottage in Sag Harbor, and I went antiquing years ago, and I spotted these two paintings in a curio shop in Amagansett, and I fell in love with them immediately. I bought them, and they've been hanging in my living room ever since.
Paying $6,000 for the pair. Everything about them, the clothing, the composition, the age-darkened canvases, suggested genuine 18th century artistry. The Antiques Roadshow appraiser began by tracing their apparent origins. The style pointed unmistakably to the famous Peale family of painters, early American masters known for their portraits of George Washington and other founding figures. In particular, these works seemed to match the hand of Charles Peale Polk, a nephew in the renowned Peale dynasty. But that's where the mystery deepened. The appraiser revealed that the original portraits of Captain Thomas Kell and his family were already well documented and had sold through a major Philadelphia gallery years earlier for $150,000. The ones before him weren't the same. A closer inspection exposed the truth. These were clever forgeries. The canvases had been artificially aged, their surfaces darkened with stain, and mounted on stretchers made to appear antique. It was a meticulous deception, convincing enough to fool even an experienced collector at first glance. Though still real paintings, their value was purely decorative.
I think we're going to have to put a retail value on them for the pair of $1,300.
Okay.
You led with passion. You have a period house.
I do.
I'm sure they look absolutely beautiful.
Spectacular there.
This is a chest on chest that my mother gave me several years back, and she bought it from an antique dealer, a local one that basically worked out of her home. When she got it, I was probably in grammar school or high school, so I can't even remember back exactly when. I didn't pay attention to those kind of details.
At first glance, it looked like a fine example of early American craftsmanship, a cherrywood Chippendale-style chest-on-chest, elegant in form and rich in history. But when the Antiques Roadshow appraiser examined the piece closely, the illusion began to unravel. The proportions were off, smaller and narrower than authentic 18th century chests. Plugged holes on the drawers hinted at replaced hardware, while streaks of white paint splatter on the inside boards raised eyebrows. Genuine 18th century furniture would never have such marks hidden within. Then came the telltale signs. Mismatched construction styles between the upper and lower halves, the top built with plain 18th century boards, the bottom with vertical 19th century planks. Even the dovetails had been tampered with, suggesting old wood had been reused to fabricate a period look. The verdict? A 20th century composite, assembled from antique parts to imitate an authentic Chippendale original, a deliberate creation meant to deceive.
And do you have any idea what your mother paid for the piece?
No, I would assume way under $500 for the time period.
If this piece were to come to auction today, I could see a conservative estimate of $800 to $1,500.
Okay.
Sadly, the American furniture market has decreased. So should this been a period piece and without any problems, the value would only be about $3,000 to $5,000 at auction.
Okay.
This was my great-grandmother's originally, and it was presented to her in 1953. I just remember it growing up on my grandmother's counter, and it was her treasure chest. Then we inherited it when she passed away. As a kid, I thought they said it was French and that it was a couple hundred years old. But I think that's what they look like in the pictures, so I really don't know. I'm guessing it's at least 53 or 56 years old.
The craftsmanship was exquisite. Yes, entirely hand-painted, richly detailed, and finished with raised gold embellishments. Yet the mark on the underside, the famous blue F within a circle, long associated with Sèvres, was a forgery. This wasn't made in the 1700s, nor in the Royal Sèvres workshop. Instead, it was crafted around 1905 by an anonymous but highly skilled French porcelain maker who expertly replicated Sèvres' signature style. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, such imitations flooded the market, often fooling collectors and even experts. Still, this was no cheap knockoff. Its scale and artistry were exceptional.
A retail price would probably fall somewhere between $8,000 and $12,000. It is the largest Svres-style box that we have ever seen.
Wow.
So that's a pretty good price for a fake, so to speak, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I brought in a ball and chain, and on there it says San Quentin Death Row, California. I got it at an antique store in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. I just saw it and it just really caught my eye. Where can you really find a ball and chain anywhere? I paid $200.
Can I ask what your boyfriend thought of it when you brought this home?
He was kind of skeptical. He's like, is that a ball and chain in the corner of your room? And I'm like, yes. And I explained to him that I've been collecting antiques since I was 16 years old, and I've always wanted to find the oddest things that I could find.
It looked like something straight out of a dark chapter in American prison history. A relic, perhaps, from one of the country's most notorious penitentiaries. San Quentin Prison, founded in 1852, holds a grim fascination for collectors. It's California's oldest prison and home to the state's men's death row, a place immortalized by Johnny Cash's legendary At San Quentin concert in 1969. With its powerful name alone, any artifact bearing that connection feels steeped in history. But as the Antiques Roadshow appraiser revealed, this particular piece wasn't forged in a prison workshop or used by an inmate. Instead, it was crafted by someone aiming to imitate that storied past.
It says San Quentin Death Row, and it's been patented to look old. This is a deliberate fake. It is not antique. It probably was never in San Quentin, I'm sorry to say.
Oh, wow.
And you paid $200 for this?
Yes.
These have sold at auction for around $150 to $300 in the past. So I think you've done okay because you still have an interesting item that's obviously a great conversation piece.
Oh, wow.
If this was an authentic ball and leg chains from San Quentin, I would expect it would have a value on the retail market of around $1,500.
Oh, wow. I mean, it's not that big of a disappointment. It's still something cool to have.
It's still worth what you paid for it.
Yeah, I would have paid so much more. I would have been probably kind of mad.
I picked this up at an estate sale about 10 years ago. This little thing was like under $10. And I came to the conclusion it couldn't be the Mad Potter of Biloxi. It must be something else, and that's why I brought it here. So.
The clay was far too thick, the shape far too rigid, and the surface finish completely off from Ohr's signature style. The real Ohr pieces, delicate, rippling, almost weightless, were masterpieces of controlled chaos. This little ashtray, though amusing, lacked that spark of madness that made Ohr's work revolutionary.
This piece is definitely way after he's dead. The technique is totally wrong. The thickness of the piece is wrong. The way it's painted, all of it. Sure, let's put a value of $25 on this for the just because we can.
I was looking at an auction catalog in Atlanta and I saw this egg, and so I thought I would go and check it out. And I couldn't go to the auction, so I called in a phone bid, and it went over my bid really quickly, so I hung up the phone and I was really upset, and my husband said, why don't you call back and see what it went for? And so I did, and they told me, and he said, why don't you see if you can buy it? I called the lady. She said, well, sometimes people get caught up in the moment and they're kind of in remorse that they bought it. And so she asked the guy, and he did. And so I got to buy it for what he bought it for.
And may I ask how much you paid for it?
Yes, $15,000.
From the outside, it looked perfect. Exquisite enamel, diamonds, pearls, and the elegant hallmarks that spelled Fabergé. But as the appraiser examined it, admiration turned to disappointment. The piece wasn't the work of Peter Carl Fabergé's workshop at all, but a finely made modern imitation, what experts cheekily call Fauxberg. Every detail told the story. Decorations that should have been hand-chased were instead pressed from molds. The enameling, though beautiful, lacked Fabergé's characteristic precision, and the diamonds, while genuine, were cut in a style inconsistent with authentic imperial eggs. Even the hallmarks, crafted to deceive, had been deliberately faked.
You told me you paid $15,000 for it.
Yeah.
I would say that a realistic auction estimate or value for this today would be between about $3,000 and $4,000.
Okay.
If it were real Fabergé,
ridiculous.
it would be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I caution you, as well as our viewers, when reading catalogue descriptions, read them very carefully, because the specific way it described, if it says bearing Fabergé marks, they make no guarantees.
Well, that's what I thought. So when do you think it was made?
I think it was made within the last 30 years.
Really?
Yes. It's a great item, but I'm just sorry to tell you it's not right.
Okay.
All right, so thank you very much
so
for bringing it in.
I can put my husband's ashes in there one day.
You can, but it just won't be Fabergé.
Okay.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This lamp is one that my husband and I purchased from a fellow that we had been buying a lot of stained glass from in Columbus, Mississippi. He used to go up into the Midwest and the Northeast and scour around for special things. And he liked us. We were a very young couple, young parents. And he called us when he got this and said, come on, see this, I have something that you will really enjoy seeing.
Okay.
And I fell in love with it.
And when did you buy it?
Late 70s, mid to late.
And do you remember what you paid for it at that time?
$4,000.
The lamp was said to be an authentic Tiffany Studios creation, sold by a trusted dealer who'd marked the supposed Tiffany signature inside the shade. For years, it had graced her home, glowing with color and sentiment, a symbol of faith in both beauty and friendship. But as the Antiques Roadshow appraiser began examining the piece, that comforting glow dimmed. The lamp's charm remained, but the truth was unavoidable. The craftsmanship, though impressive, didn't match the unparalleled precision of genuine Tiffany work. The glass lacked the depth and fire of Tiffany's Faverolles glass, and the metalwork was just slightly off. Too heavy, too ordinary. Then came the fatal clue. The signature. It wasn't engraved, stamped, or even placed where Tiffany would have marked it. Instead, it appeared clumsily added, the hallmark of imitation. The base had been repainted, the wiring modernized, and even the fittings mismatched. It was, in essence, a 20th century hybrid, likely pieced together from various lamp parts to imitate a Tiffany original.
If you put this in an auction right now, in the condition it is, you're probably $300 to $500 or maybe even $400 to $600. So it's a wonderful, interesting tale of mistaken identity, let's say that.
Okay, yeah.
And the person that sold it to you may very well have not known.
Well, we knew when we did it that there was a risk, and like you say, we've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I don't feel near as bad now about putting it out and using it.
Yeah.
I was working in Kinshasa, that was Zaire at the time, now a Democratic Republic of the Congo, and I was in a car, stopped at a red light, and a guy ran up to the window and held up this object and wanted me to buy it. It looked like it had a patina from having been handled, and that impressed me, and it looked like the carving was done well, and I could just gather that in a glance. What he asked for was about 10 times what it was worth to me at the time, so I offered him what I'd be happy to get it for. He said, absolutely not, but the light changed, and I said, okay, thank you very much, we're going. And then he says, okay, I had probably pulled out a $100 bill to offer to him. The exchange was made, and here it is.
The appraiser began by confirming the object's origin. It was indeed modeled after a Congo royal whisk, an emblem of power used by chiefs and spiritual leaders as a mark of authority. Every element, the face, the posture, the craftsmanship, reflected deep cultural knowledge. For a moment, it appeared to be the real thing, an artifact of prestige from one of Central Africa's most respected artistic traditions. But then came the closer inspection. The surface told a different story. The patina, meant to suggest centuries of handling, was too uniform. Even the delicate upper sections had the same sheen as the grip, an impossibility for an item used daily in ceremony. Real wear leaves uneven traces, darker in the crevices, and lighter where hands have polished the surface smooth. The conclusion: a clever 20th century fake, expertly carved to deceive even trained eyes. Yet despite its false history, the piece retained aesthetic power and cultural resonance.
As a reproduction, it's still worth a heck of a lot more than you paid for it. I think it's still worth $300 to $500. The center of our world now in tribal art and African art is Paris. In today's market, in Paris, this kind of piece would be worth north of $50,000.
If it were authentic.
If it were authentic.
Next stop, Paris.
I acquired it in an antique store in Oklahoma City about 15 years ago, roughly. And we were with some good friends, and she was very knowledgeable in Native American studies or artwork. And she said, "Oh my gosh, you know, it's a horse." I knew what it was. Is it a horse stick or a dance stick, as they call it? And she said it was Lakota, late 1800s, is what she felt.
And what did you pay for it?
I paid $700.
These horse sticks, often used during plains grass dances, symbolized respect and mourning. They carried deep cultural meaning, reminders of the connection between warrior and horse, spirit and memory. For a collector, owning one would mean holding a piece of living history. But as the Antiques Roadshow appraiser examined it closely, the surface began to tell a different story. The wear didn't align with real use. Areas that would have been gripped by hand were untouched, while other sections showed artificial darkening, a forced patina, too deliberate to be genuine. It was, in essence, a crafted imitation designed to appear old. The appraiser estimated that the piece was not from the 1800s at all, but rather made in the 1920s or 1930s, during a period when reproductions of native ceremonial artifacts became popular with collectors. Though not authentic, its artistry and cultural reference still held decorative appeal.
I would think in an auction, it's probably worth $200 to $300.
Oh, so apparently I paid a little too much, but it's worth that to me.
Now, you said you bought it from a warehouse, right?
I was working in a warehouse about 5 years ago,
okay.
And I saw her about 100 feet away, standing, by one of the warehouse doors.
Okay.
And I couldn't believe she was real.
Okay.
If wood. So I inquired after, why it was there and how much was it. It wasn't for sale.
Okay.
And I was told it was for sale.
Okay. How much was it?
$300.
So you paid him that and hauled it
couldn't
away.
write the check fast enough. Yeah.
And since then you were offered a bit more for it, you said?
I've been offered $12,000 for it.
By a guy who just came by your place?
Yeah, he actually dealt in antiques and came by and he told me he'd offer that on the spot.
On the spot. That's pretty exciting. And
yeah,
you
it was very
wanted
exciting.
to decide to bring it to the roadshow, right?
It seemed like a collector's dream, a relic of 19th century Americana. These tobacconist figures, often carved as Native Americans, once stood proudly outside cigar shops, a nod to the cultural link between native people and tobacco cultivation. Real examples from the 1800s are now museum-worthy treasures, some worth tens of thousands. But when the Antiques Roadshow appraiser examined the statue closely, the truth emerged layer by layer. The face looked too modern, more 20th century than Victorian. The carving was coarse, the paint too bright, and, crucially, there was only one coat of paint instead of the layered buildup found on genuine store figures that had been repainted through decades of outdoor use. A split in the wood revealed it had been carved from green wood, indicating it was made quite recently. The appraiser's verdict: a modern reproduction, likely made in Asia, designed to imitate the classic cigar store figures of the past.
I'd say it's probably worth about $300.
Really? Okay.
It might be worth a little more. I don't know where that guy is that offered you 12, but...
Well, I'm going to go find him before the show
You
goes
might
on.
go find him, go run. But thank you for... I'm sorry to give you that news,
That's
but
all right.
it's not as if you paid $12,000.
Right.
My mother had given it to me, and it had been given to her by a family friend and had gone down a couple generations. The friend who provided this to my mother, she traveled extensively through Europe. She was just very close to my mom, and then when she gave it to her. So I really know very little about it.
The Antiques Roadshow appraiser's excitement was immediate. The vase, he explained, was created by the Amphora Porcelain Company of Bohemia around 1900 to 1905, a golden age for Art Nouveau design. The mark on its base, RSTK, short for Reisner, Stellmacher, and Kessel, confirmed its authenticity. The likely artist? Nicholas Canhauser, one of Amphora's most celebrated sculptors. Every inch of the piece reflected the artistic revolution of its time: layered enamels, delicate gilding, and tiny imitation jewels known as grès bijoux. The design echoed the sensual, decorative style of Gustav Klimt, with its sinuous lines, rich textures, and ethereal femininity. The appraiser described it as one of the finest examples of its kind, a showstopper in both craftsmanship and form.
At auction, as an estimate, easily would be $3,000 to $4,000.
Wow.
In a shop, most likely more than that, more like $5,000, perhaps up. She could have been smaller. She could have had less going on around her. She could not have had a crown. She's got it all.
Yeah.
She's a real winner.
Wow. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. When I saw it, you brought this up, my heart skipped a beat.
I saw it in an antique store in Old Town Alexandria, and they had a whole bunch of different weather vanes. I like weather vanes to start with, but a fish I'd never seen before. I'd seen, horses and all kinds of things.
Right.
And it just looked really interesting, and it kept kind of calling to me the way things do. And
right.
I went back 2 or 3 times, and it was still there, so I thought...
At the show, right?
Sleek, sculptural, and said to be from the late 19th century, crafted by the famed J.W. Fisk Ironworks of Boston. The dealer's story was convincing, and though the $17,500 price tag was a shock, the guest couldn't resist. A rare codfish weather vane from the golden age of American folk art, how could it not be worth it? But when the Antiques Roadshow appraiser began examining it, the shine of that story began to dull. Authentic 19th century vanes, he explained, were precisely engineered to function, balanced perfectly to turn with the wind. This one, however, was too heavy and crudely joined, its seams merely folded and likely glued rather than lead-soldered and smoothed as originals were. Then there was the patina, that greenish surface collectors love. On true antique vanes, the color forms naturally over decades as gilding wears away and copper oxidizes. Here, it was manufactured, an artificial blend of paint and chemicals meant to mimic age. The truth? The weather vane wasn't from the 1800s at all. It was a modern reproduction, made to look old, and later aged up by someone hoping to profit from the booming weather vane market, where authentic examples can sell for 6 figures.
I kind of hate to say this, but you're probably guessing it's not going to be a lot.
No.
It's a decorative value of about $500 or so. So that's really what it's worth.
17,500 versus 500, it's close.
Close, but there's a big difference in between, I know.
Yeah.
I have a feeling you're going to get the money back. I'm going to be optimistic.
I bought it at an antique show in Miami about 2 years ago. I knew a bit about George Ohr, and I thought it was really rare to see a piece, so I decided to buy it.
And you said you paid how much for this?
$2,000.
The piece appeared to carry Ohr's signature flair, twisted form, rippling surface, and bold glaze. But as the appraiser examined it, the truth revealed a tragic irony. It was a genuine George Ohr creation, just one that had been destroyed by forgery. The picture itself was thrown by Ohr around 1905 during the height of his creative powers. Its form, thin-walled, asymmetrical, perfectly balanced, was unmistakably his. Yet the glaze, That shimmering surface that collectors prize most wasn't his work at all. It was a fake glaze, added decades later by someone hoping to make an unglazed ore pot appear more valuable. The story behind it was one the appraiser knew personally. In the 1970s, a wave of ore bisque pieces, genuine but unfinished, had been enhanced with fake glazes and sold as original works. Even experts were fooled, and many true ore vessels were permanently altered, their historical integrity erased. Ohr himself had famously stopped glazing his pottery, declaring, "God put no color in the soul, so I will put no color on my pots." The irony, his spiritual simplicity inspired others to counterfeit his art for profit.
So this piece, as it is right now, somebody might pay an antique dealer at a show $100 to $200 for it because it's been ruined with this fake glaze, even though you have a real piece at the same show with no glaze, at least $2,000 to $3,000. This piece with a real glaze, $20,000.
Really? Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you. I wish I had better news for you.
I wish you did too.
This is educational television after all.
It's good for people to know.
Well, I understand that in January 11th, 1981, you attended an auction and you bought these two impressive pieces of porcelain. Tell me about how you happened to attend that auction.
The auction was from the estate of a daughter of a gentleman by the name of J.C. Rogers, who was one of the early founders of Wamego, Kansas, where I grew up.
So you've saved the catalog, which I think is very interesting, and both of these pieces are actually pictured and identified in the catalog.
Yes, they are.
And so tell me what you paid for both of these.
We paid $475 for the urn and $525 for the Sevres box.
At first glance, the guests' two porcelain treasures, a richly painted Svres-style box and an ornate Ludwigsburg-style urn, seemed like they had leapt straight from the 18th century. But when the Antiques Roadshow appraiser examined them closely, history told a different tale. Both pieces were indeed beautifully made, hand-painted, skillfully gilded, and radiating the refined charm collectors adore. Yet, beneath their glamour lay a carefully constructed illusion. The Sèvres mark, with its date letters suggesting an 18th century origin, and the Ludwigsburg gold mark were both forgeries, added to deceive buyers into believing they were centuries old. These weren't modern counterfeits, but antique fakes, made in Europe, likely around the late 19th or early 20th century, by talented artisans copying the most fashionable porcelain of the past. At the time, such replicas were common and catered to the booming demand for aristocratic decor among collectors in the 1950s and 60s. The appraiser delivered the mixed verdict with grace. Both were fakes, yet still valuable.
Good news is they're still very valuable. Not all fakes are valueless, so actually your investment hasn't turned out to be all that bad. This beautiful detailed box here would probably retail somewhere between $1,000 and $1,250 now, even with the spurious or pseudo Sev mark on the bottom. And this beautiful urn here, due to the high decorative appeal and high quality, would probably retail easily for between $1,500 and $2,500.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for coming in.
We were at an auction and we found this one, my daughter and I, and it's by E.W. Wyon.
There's a signature down here.
Yeah, he designed and sculpted this in 1848.
Okay.
And about 7 months later, we went to another auction and we found this one by the same man. It's designed by someone different, which I can't really make out, and it is sculpted by E.W. Wyon also. The original one, the one that's in the full frame, was, I think she paid about $85 for it.
$85, okay.
This one, when we saw it, it cost us $200. And it's a smaller frame, but we wanted it to go along with the other.
The guest's research supported her hopes. Wyon had indeed created such works in the mid-1800s, some of which were later associated with Wedgwood. But as the Antiques Roadshow appraiser examined them, subtle inconsistencies emerged. The plaques weren't carved marble, as authentic 19th century pieces would have been. Instead, they were pressed stone composites, partially hand-finished to imitate depth and texture. The backs were artificially aged, and even the labels, with phrases like carvers and gilders, picture makers and restorers, England, were washed to look centuries old. In truth, these were modern reproductions, made in England and elsewhere to evoke the neoclassical style of Wyon's originals. Though not antique, their craftsmanship was still attractive, and at the prices paid, the guest hadn't overpaid.
So basically, what you paid at $85 for this is a fairly good market rate for it. $200 for that, maybe a little strong, but not a great deal over the price that you should have been paying. But they're nice items, good decorative things. They look like they're 19th century, but they're basically brand new.
Okay.
Okay?
We still enjoy them.
Okay.
You mentioned when you first came to my table that you bought these items at auction and that you're an auction buyer. Can you tell me a little bit about the happening when you bought these pieces?
I just bought them at an auction out in the country where he sells things from $1 to $1,000, couple thousand, depending on what it is.
And were they cataloged?
No, you're on your own. If you decide it's worth something, it's up to you to bid how much you want to.
When the guest arrived with a shimmering Tiffany-style vase and paperweight, they looked, at first glance, like treasures from the golden age of American art glass. The soft iridescent glow, the elegant floriform shape, even the engraved signature L.C. Tiffany Favril, all seemed to whisper the name of Louis Comfort Tiffany, the master of glass who transformed light into art at the turn of the 20th century. The guest had bought both pieces at a country auction where nothing was catalogued and instinct was the only guide. For $600 on the vase and $120 on the paperweight, it felt like a gamble that might just pay off. But when the Antiques Roadshow appraiser examined them, the illusion quickly faded. Though each piece was clearly trying to be Tiffany, the truth lay in the details and the weight. Authentic Tiffany Favril glass is light, fluid, almost alive with movement and color. These pieces were thick, heavy, and dull in comparison. Their forms lacked the ethereal elegance that defined Tiffany's work. Even the signature, though correct in spelling, was faked, a mark added to deceive rather than denote craftsmanship.
They are worth considerably less than you paid for them. They are worth about $30 for this paperweight, which Tiffany would not have produced anything quite like this. And this floriform vase is worth probably $150 to $200. But you can enjoy them.
We had purchased this in 1980 from a friend of ours who had a gallery in Palm Beach, Florida, actually. And I had it and went through a divorce in 1985, and this is what I was given as part of my settlement.
You know who it's by?
I sure do.
Tell me that.
Salvador Dali.
Okay, and do you remember how much you bought it for?
I think we paid maybe $250 at that time.
Okay.
The Antiques Roadshow appraiser quickly recognized it, one of 12 etchings from Dali's 1971 Song of Solomon portfolio. Each piece in the series combined biblical romance with Dali's trademark symbolism, sensuous forms, glowing color, and divine chaos rendered in gold-tinted ink. At first glance, everything appeared perfect. The texture of the etching, the gold dust highlights, the stenciled color, all consistent with authentic Dali works. But there was one problem: the signature. The print bore Dali's name in pencil, along with the French abbreviation EI for épreuve d'artiste, artist's proof. The trouble is, these prints weren't supposed to be individually signed. In the original portfolio, Dali only signed the justification page, the master sheet that verified the set. So, while the etching itself was authentic, the signature had been added later, likely by a dealer trying to boost its price. Ironically, that false addition lowered its credibility.
So, if I put this up at auction, with that signature on it, it could fall flat and maybe make $100, maybe make $200, whereas it really does have much more value than that. So I'm going to suggest something revolutionary that you normally do not hear specialists say. I would go out on a limb and say what you should do is have a conservator restore this and very carefully remove that signature and clean the sheet up a little bit. And you would have what is a 100% authentic etching from the Song of Solomon suite.
Uh-huh.
And that way, at auction, I would estimate this at around $1,000 to $1,500.
Wow. Okay.
This piece belonged to my parents. They had it out at their pool. And from what I understand, it came from Mexico in the 50s. We paid about $500 in about 1962.
Even tests had been performed, the guest explained. No signs of modern tool marks, no clear evidence of forgery. But when the Antiques Roadshow appraiser examined it with a trained eye, the verdict hinged not on chemistry, but on style. True Olmec sculpture, he explained, is defined by extraordinary balance and precision. Real pieces from that civilization, often depicting rulers or deities with serene, powerful expressions, feel alive with symmetry and purpose. This figure, however, lacked that refinement. Its proportions were clumsy, its detailing heavy-handed. It didn't carry the graceful restraint of true Olmec artistry. In short, the tests might have fooled science, but not the eye of experience. It was a 20th century fake, carved to resemble an Olmec artifact and sold to the booming tourist and collector market of mid-century Mexico. Still, there was a silver lining. Though not a priceless relic, its decorative appeal was undeniable.
The good news is that even on the decorative market, not the fine art market, but on the decorative market, this piece is still worth $1,500 to $2,500. Now, the bad news is, had it been real, a major Olmec piece like this would have been well into six figures.
Wow.
Now, didn't I make your day?
Yeah, you made my day.
Originally, a friend of mine from Fairview Heights bought it. He paid like $3,900 for it.
Okay.
And he wanted to get rid of it, so I traded him out of it.
What was your trade value?
At that time, it was high. It was like $7,500 or something.
Okay.
I traded it to a fella in Peoria, Illinois. Well, I traded him quite a bit of African, but he had quite a collection, and he decided he wanted to get rid of all his African. So I ended up trading the African back from him, and then I traded it to a fella in St. Louis. And after he had it for a while, I decided I wanted it back again, so I traded him out of it. After that, I just kind of hung on to it.
Over the years, the mask had passed through several hands, each time climbing in perceived value, traded, reclaimed, and traded again. The guest believed it to be from the 1800s, a ceremonial mask from the Chokwe people of Angola and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. To the Antiques Roadshow appraiser, the surface details seemed promising at first glance. The incised facial patterns were regionally correct, the bone teeth authentic, and the hair convincingly aged. But authenticity lies deeper than surface beauty. And that's where the mask began to unravel. The appraiser explained how true ceremonial masks bear physical evidence of use. The story of dance etched inside the wood. Holes for raffia skirts would show teardrop wear from constant motion, and the interior would bear sweat stains, pressure marks, and the dark polish of repeated contact with human skin. This mask, however, was too clean, too even, its interior artificially darkened to imitate age. The signs of ritual life were missing, replaced by manufactured history. In truth, it was a 20th century fake, crafted not for ceremony but for deception, made to fool collectors, not to honor spirits.
So what we have, we don't have a decorative mask. What we do have is we have a fake, because this was made to deceive. This mask, as a fake, is worth $200 to $300.
Wow.
That would be a good retail value. I've sold Chokwe masks to museums, and you know how expensive they can be.
Oh, I know.
But hundreds of thousands of dollars now.
I'll probably put it on my mantle and leave it there until I die.
You know what? It's attractive to look at.
Diana, tell me how much you paid for this.
I paid $600 for it at auction.
You did?
Yes, I did.
And what do you think this is?
I think it's a Humphreys, Native American. I believe he was from England, an Englishman. He's done several pieces and some are in museums. I think it's worth about 5 times what I paid for it.
The Antiques Roadshow appraiser, however, had a different story to tell. one that began with a single word: fake. The bronze, while handsome and well-made, lacked the refinement and crisp detail of an original casting. The flow of the lines, the articulation of the face and hands, all were slightly duller, softer, and less defined than they should be. These weren't flaws of the artist, but of replication. The piece, the appraiser explained, was a restrike, made from a mold taken off an original sculpture long after its creation. Unlike genuine artist-supervised castings, these restrikes are unauthorized reproductions produced for the modern art market. They carry visual appeal, but not the historical or artistic legitimacy of a true period bronze. While not worthless, its value lay firmly in its decorative charm, not artistic rarity.
There's no one really legitimately at this point creating these Humphreys bronzes, and it's important to know because so many of these come up on the marketplace, and people, they look good, and to the untutored eye, they really appear as though they're period, and in fact they're not. So they're worth about $600.
Well, yippee!
If they were original, we'd be looking at a $30,000 bronze.
Oh, wow.
So the price structure is very different.
In my boy's bedroom, it looks great.
Perfect. Great. Just the place for it.
Well, we were living in China for 18 months with my husband's employment, and we purchased these in Nantong, which is a city on the Yangtze River in Jiangsu province. We bought them at we called it a Sunday antique market, since we didn't know the correct name in Chinese.
The vases came with a colorful story. The seller had claimed they'd just been excavated, ancient treasures freshly unearthed from the earth. But communication was limited to gestures, scribbled numbers, and a lot of hopeful imagination. The Antiques Roadshow appraiser didn't take long to separate myth from reality. First came the material test. A simple scrape of steel against the surface left a visible mark. Proof it wasn't jade, as the couple had believed. True jade is harder than steel and never yields. Instead, this was soapstone, or steatite, a softer, inexpensive substitute often used in decorative reproductions. Then came the clincher: aluminum inlays. There was no aluminum in the Tang dynasty, the appraiser explained. The Tang artisans of 1,300 years ago had worked in bronze and gold, not a metal that wouldn't be refined until the 19th century. The so-called antique vases were, in fact, modern fakes, made to look ancient with artificial dirt rubbed into their filigree and surface rust crafted to deceive. The pottery base beneath the metal was real, a Chun-Yao-style ware, imitating a genuine turquoise and purple glaze from Henan province. But the craftsmanship screamed 20th century.
So even with fakes, are they worth anything at all?
No, not particularly. $10, $20 a piece.
Ah. Okay, well, I was afraid of that.
When the guest unveiled their delicate medieval-style painting, it seemed like a fragment of the distant past, a luminous miniature straight from a 15th century monastery. Painted on aged parchment, with musical notes faintly visible on the reverse, it had all the aura of sacred art. But as the Antiques Roadshow appraiser examined it, the truth emerged. It wasn't medieval at all.
This is something by an artist known as the Spanish forger. We don't know his real dates. We know he's painting around 1900 to about 1930, and he was producing these manuscript illuminations on the backs of old antiphonals, or old songbooks. And I can show you the back of that. You can see here what we have is this old musical notation, but it doesn't match up what's on the front. So he has old paper from the period he wants to, but he's doing it in the 1900s.
Collectors were fooled for decades, and his works even made their way into major museums before being unmasked in the 20th century. Ironically, what began as deliberate fraud has since become its own collectible art form. Today, Spanish forger paintings are highly sought after, not as medieval relics, but as historical curiosities of forgery itself.
The funny thing about it is they're actually worth about $4,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah, even as a fake.
Wow, that's great.
Thanks for bringing it in.
Well, thanks a lot.
In the grand saga of Texas history, few documents are as sacred as the Texas Declaration of Independence, the bold 1836 proclamation that severed all ties with Mexico and declared Texas a free republic. But decades later, that very symbol of freedom became the center of one of the biggest forgery scandals in American historical collecting. As Antiques Roadshow's appraiser Wes Cowan explained, the story unfolded like a Western, full of big egos, big money, and bigger lies.
The story starts to unravel in the late 1980s, but it really stretches back probably sometime to the late 60s or early 70s, when there is a sudden interest in Texas history. And there were plenty of people who were willing to pay big money for imprints like this. And this says, we are free from Mexico, baby, and if you're a collector, that's the thing you've got to have.
It was a sharp-eyed printer and book dealer named Tom Taylor who uncovered the ruse. Having sold several of these supposed originals at $20,000 to $30,000 apiece, he grew uneasy when more and more began appearing. Comparing them side by side with verified originals, Taylor noticed subtle but damning discrepancies. The forgeries were slightly larger, contained corrected typefaces, and, most notably, a spelling error that no true 1836 printer would have made. The investigation eventually traced the operation to a small circle of men who forged and sold the counterfeits, none of whom lived long enough to face justice.
Tom Taylor, to his credit, when he discovered that 2 documents that he had sold were fakes, he went immediately to his customers and said, I sold you a fake, here's your money back.
Wow. But let's play a game. What if one of those original 1,000 just escapes, shows up someday, and we get our hands on it? What would we expect to pay for this?
I think that if one of these originals appeared in a public auction, it would easily bring more than $1 million.
So I should stop looking or save my money and look really hard.
I think that's right.
Now, but it bears in mind, these fakes have a place in history. This is a historical moment as well for Texas collectors, and there are only a few of those that we know still exist. Do they have value?
Well, you know, look, I mean, I think that if I were to be so fortunate as to be an owner of one of these, I'd love to have a fake for my collection. And I probably wouldn't mind paying maybe up to $1,000 for one.
But more of a novelty than an actual collectible.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching till the end. If you enjoyed uncovering these shocking fakes and forgeries, dive deeper into beauty and history, explore Tiffany's most stunning vases, or discover the magnificent jade treasures of China's Qianlong era. Click on your next journey now.